Good morning. Welcome to First Unitarian Toronto. It's so good to gather together to co-create sacred space that rejuvenates our lives and our spirits on this spring morning. We're grateful to have you with us. I'm Angela Clausen, Director of Lifespan Religious Education. I'm joined by our Senior Minister, Reverend Sean Newton, our pianist, Adam Sakiyama, and it's a joy for us to welcome today Karen Dunk-Green and Linda Curley, whom we'll hear from in just a bit. Also, we're grateful, as always, for our AV engineer, Matthew Rideout, who is serving behind the scenes. As we begin, we acknowledge that Toronto is located on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Ojibwe, Chippewa, and the Wendat. Wherever we may be, may we renew our commitment this day to appreciating our interdependence in keeping with our seventh principle, so that we can begin to heal the damage done by attitudes of dominance, first over the earth, and by extension, one person over another, in the ongoing and essential work of reconciliation. And now, as we begin our service, I invite you to light a candle or chalice if you have one nearby, and to join us in the words of our chalice lighting. As we light our chalice, may its flame kindle within us the warmth of compassion, the glow of love, the fire of commitment, and the light of truth.
We come together this morning seeking a reality beyond our narrow selves that binds us in compassion, love, and understanding to other human beings and to the interdependent web of all living things. May our hearts and minds be opened in this time to the power and the insight that weaves together the scattered threads of our experience and helps us to remember the wholeness of which we are a part. We come together this day to renew our faith in the goodness and beauty of life, to reaffirm the way of the open mind and the full heart, to rekindle the flame of memory and hope, and to reclaim the vision of an earth made more fair with all of her people one. From our many and varied paths, we unite to build up a community of love and commitment and hope, to give expression to the highest aspirations of our congregation. Let us now join our voices as one in the words of our covenant. Love is our doctrine. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve life, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with all.
As we bring you news of the congregation today, we begin with a special announcement from Karen Dunk-Green, President of our Board of Trustees.
Thanks, Angela. Good morning, everybody. So a couple of months ago, I spoke to you about our timeline for leaving 175 Sinclair West. We're hoping to be able to gather together in person sometime this fall, which is very exciting. And we wanted to make sure that everyone had an opportunity to visit 175 in some way before moving to a temporary location. Change can be scary, and it can be fun. When we move, we'll make things comfortable in as many ways as we can. And in my last announcement, I shared reasons to be excited about starting fresh in a new place. I hope it helped and that you've been feeling okay about it. However, our landlord called to say that they were reviewing their timelines again. And I'm happy to tell you today that we've just signed an extension to our lease at 175 St. Clair. We will be able to use the building until the end of June 2022. That means we can return to meeting in person there this fall and have a complete congregational year in a place that's familiar to our staff and to most of you. Eventually, we will talk about transition again, and I'll be encouraging you again to think of it as exciting and meaningful. But in our current context, this is clearly a relief. Our On the Move team will continue working on purging and organizing for next year's move at a more relaxed pace. And our wonderful staff will get ready to launch a hybrid style of worship, so you can choose to attend at the building or from your couch whenever you wish. Of course, the Real Estate Task Force continues to work on finding a permanent new home, and we'll give you a bigger update on that work at the Congregation's annual spring meeting, which is coming up on June the 6th. Please plan to join together that day after the service. And as always, I appreciate your patience with all of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen, for this wonderful news and for the many gifts of commitment and service you and all of the members of the Real Estate Task Force have given us in this ongoing and challenging work. In other news, our meditation group will not meet tomorrow night due to the holiday, but resumes next week. You're warmly invited, though, to join us after the service today for our newcomer information session, or to accept the on-screen invitation at the close of the service to join our randomized chat groups. Also, our Tuesday morning awakenings group and Thursday evening reflections group are wonderful ways to learn more about our principles and sources, reflect on provided readings, and meet others via Zoom. You'll find the links to these and all our ongoing gatherings on our website. As Karen said, upcoming Congregational spring meeting on June 6th. Registration will open at noon for the meeting that starts at 12:30 on that day, along with updates about real estate, the recent Canadian Unitarian Council AGM, and refugee sponsorship. Agenda items will include approval of the budget for 2021-22, election of trustees to the board of directors and members of the nominating committee. And as we get ready for that meeting, there are reminders in our weekly e-news First Light about how to ensure you're eligible to vote and how to make participation via Zoom as smooth as possible, including updating your Zoom software. Mo McMahon, Bill Dunk Green, and Calvin Drake offer assistance on each of those, and I'll drop links in the chat for anyone who needs to contact Mo, Bill, or Calvin. Also, on that same Sunday, June 6th, our worship service will include a special flower communion meditation in images and music. Flower communion is a beloved tradition for many Unitarian Universalist congregations in North America and beyond, and you're invited to select a photo of a flower or flowers, or you with a flower or tree or plant, and email your photo to Reverend Lynn by Thursday, June 3rd to include your floral offering. In the wider UU world, the CUC is launching a process to consider an 8th UU principle. The process will culminate in a special meeting of the CUC to be held on Saturday, November 27th, and you're invited to join CUC Executive Director Vita Ng for a conversation about the 8th principle process and a way forward on May 29th and June 26th. And details about that are in our weekly e-news First Light. And now, turning to some vitally important work going on in the wider community, we're welcoming Linda Curley, Executive Director of Birchmount Bluffs Neighborhood Center, in conversation with Reverend Sean.
Thank you, Angela, and thank you, Linda, so much for being here. It has been an honor for the families in our congregation over these past 8 years, I believe, to be in relationship with Birchmount Bluffs Neighborhood Center. And so it's a delight to have you here this morning and to update us on the work that your organization is doing in these times. So I know you've been working on issues of poverty reduction for some time, and I want to ask, what is that work like today, and how have you seen things change in recent years?
Thank you for having me here today. It's right now, it's very difficult,
Yeah.
Considering the pandemic. But just to give a little bit of background, in 2018, the statistics state that 1 in 4 children and 1 in 5 adults live in poverty in Toronto. There's been growing prosperity in the city, but many communities continue to experience significant poverty, particularly in Scarborough, in the area that we serve. Poverty in the communities that BBNC serves, we have a child and family poverty rate of 17 to 57%. That means greater than 1 in 2 families live in poverty in various locations in Scarborough. It's not a change, but it has been more increasingly highlighted is the racialized and gendered issues around poverty. Residents face numerous systemic barriers that prevent immediate needs from being addressed.
And from where you sit and what you see day in and day out, what do you feel like needs to change when it comes to reducing poverty or serving this part of the population better? It's a big question.
Oh, that's a really big question.
Yeah.
Perhaps
This is a receptive
one
audience, so feel free to let us
that,
let it rip.
perhaps one that I'm not completely qualified to answer.
Sure.
But poverty is a community. It's a societal issue. It's a human rights issue.
Absolutely.
It as previously as I mentioned, it is a racial and gender issue. There are several issues to be addressed within that: housing stability, service access, transportation equity, food access, quality jobs, livable wages, and then systemic change are the major pieces. And I just want to make a really quick reference. Over 50 years ago, Martin Luther King warned that the whole world is doomed if something isn't done, and done in a hurry, to bring racialized people out of their long years of poverty. To be free from poverty is a human right, and unless we address the root causes, health, income, education, ties between racism and economic suffering, as Mr. King warned, oppressed communities will continue to be vulnerable.
Absolutely. So can I ask you what, even in this tough time, like what has been most gratifying or satisfying in your work? Like where do you feel there's connection that sustains you and where you feel like you are able to make impact?
The people. While this past year has been incredibly difficult, I have never seen the community come together stronger in more collaborative ways than in the past 15 months. I am part of multiple tables where there are multiple organizations and residents groups working together in, again, far more collaborative ways than we ever have in the past. That's been a huge satisfying piece. The other satisfying piece has been, well, our center has been closed and all of our work has been virtual. Mm-hmm. We do have a small team of volunteers, and I just want to give you a couple of shout outs to them. In March, 156 families totaling 503 individuals received 495 boxes plus jugs of laundry detergent, toilet paper. More than 25% of the participants are children under the age of 13. 7 volunteers picked up donations and shopped for needed supplies. Products were sorted and ready for packing by 3 volunteers. All boxes were packed by 10 volunteers over 8 days. 26 carloads, 9 teams of 16 volunteer drivers and navigators delivered packages over 4 days. And all of this was made possible by financial and product donations from the community, residents, and local businesses.
Which I know that we've been involved in creating or helping to fund some of those boxes in the past. That's often been a holiday-focused thing we've done with the families and the congregation. So yeah, I think there's I'm hearing a call for us to do that again. So
yes, our intention and hope is to be able to do another delivery in June or July. And yes, your congregation has been hugely supportive in the past, and certainly we appreciate it. But with COVID, it's been difficult. It's been really, really hard. As mentioned, our center has been closed, so we haven't been able to have people come in and do what they've done in the past. So
sure. Well, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Thank you for your good work in our city and for bringing it to our awareness. I'm going to drop the link for our Canada Helps page into the chat and invite people to give generously. And hopefully that will be of support to your organization in the weeks and months to come.
And thank you very much for having me here today and being able to share this information. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to contact me directly at BBNC. And I know both yourself and Angela have my contact information, and
We do.
that would be fantastic.
Thank you so much, Linda. And we will continue to raise funds through the rest of the month and alerting people in our newsletter as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. Enter with me now into a time of contemplation, meditation, and prayer. Our meditation words today are Mary Oliver's poem, The Song of the Builders. On a summer morning, I sat down on a hillside to think about God, a worthy pastime. Near me, I saw a single cricket. It was moving the grains of the hillside this way and that way. How great was its energy, how humble its effort. Let us hope it will always be like this, each of us going on in our inexplicable ways, building the universe.
In this time of hope and possibility, we are reminded with each passing day of the sacred truth that our lives are linked in essential and sacred ways. As we enter into this time together and yet separate, let us do what we still can do to witness to those we know and those we've yet to meet, as we tenderly hold the daily cares, concerns, and celebrations of others as they're shared here with us this morning, beginning with our care for the wider world. Today, our hearts are with all who were injured or are now mourning loved ones lost in 11 days of brutal bombardment in the Middle East. We pray that the fragile ceasefire now in effect will pave the way for a return to relative calm. We cry out in anguish as we come to know the manner of Ronald Green's death at the hands of Louisiana troopers in 2019. One among too many similar stories. We want to say their names, and we are overwhelmed by the staggering length of the list of precious sons and daughters, siblings, and nibblings. We hold in loving care all whose homes are threatened by wildfires in First Nations and settler communities in Western Canada, and those evacuating Congo's main city of Goma in the wake of a volcanic eruption. As well, we think today of those who have made their home in the Lamport Stadium encampment. May each and all who are displaced, no matter the cause, find their way to safe and hospitable places to call home. Finally, we hold hope that we're getting closer to the end of COVID-19 with every vaccine dose delivered and every milestone reached, while we yet watch from afar that such a great number of people continue to be negatively affected by illness and vaccine inequity around the world. May we all find sources of strength, patience, and courage to sustain and guide our right action. Because a sorrow named is a burden shared, let us now lift up the other concerns or sorrows that weigh on us today by typing them in the chat, by speaking them aloud, or by holding them in the silent sanctuary of our hearts. I'll do my best to read them as you enter them. And if you're joining us on YouTube, please remember to enter your joy or sorrow early so that we can be sure to include it, taking a slight lag into account. Jim and Linda, who are inveterate square dancers, mourn a dancing friend who died of depression. Jim and Linda, that is such difficult news. Thank you for allowing us to join you in mourning that today. And one of Meg Edmondson's clients passed away from an overdose, his life taken too soon. Owen and Meg, thank you for letting us know about that. Robin and Ren and Harry are speaking about Manitoba, where we're on the brink of enacting ethical decisions about who gets life support as we are overwhelmed by the third wave. Robin, our hearts are with all who are in healthcare, who are on the front lines, and who may be faced with making those terrible decisions. Ruth Tate shares that Ruth's mother, Janice Tate, who many of us know and remember fondly, is slowly recovering from a critical illness and is suffering the isolation of hospital care. Ruth, please convey to Janice that so many of us think of Janice often, remember her fondly, and are sending wishes for her recovery. Kelly Ferguson is thinking about Robin Byers on the loss of her father. Anwar Knight, thinking of a friend who has lost a second sister to COVID-19. This is very difficult news, Anwar. Thank you for sharing that, and we are thinking of your friend and this tremendous grief. Amanda is sharing concern for anyone dealing with depression and isolation and loss of hope. Jennifer Beer, thinking of the owners of our neighborhood coffee shop, Crosscut, which was destroyed by an unsafe driver last night. Kelly Donovan, Anne's son, is still in hospital, unconscious. I know that you had shared that with us last week, Kelly. Thank you for letting us know that Anne is still hoping and waiting for Donovan's well-being. Jack Horsley, thinking of his friend Joe, who died from complications arising from Alzheimer's this past week. Our hearts are with you, Jack and Joe and his family, Joe's family. Margaret Vandenbroek, thinking of Ontarians whose elective surgeries and diagnostic tests are a couple of years behind. This is a very significant sorrow for all of us. Lynn McDowell is sharing that Lynn herself is in hospital in a deep depression that's lasted 14 months. Lynn, we are certainly sending care to you. Grateful that you're able to be with us today and letting us know how you're doing. Monica Geary, thinking of her dear colleague who is in hospital with COVID, hoping that she recovers soon. India Taylor said goodbye to her 56-year-old cousin this past week who died of cancer. A bright light gone. India, our condolences to you and your cousin's family. Linda Heron is sharing that if you want to send a card to Sorley Maddox, she's at East Park Healthcare Center, 82 Buttonwood Avenue, Unit WE in Toronto, and the postal code and the address are there in the chat for all who would like to send greetings to Sorley. And Natsia Miller is sharing that Jeff Smith, a renowned Queen's University professor, died this week. Natsia, thank you for bringing that news to us. May all that has been shared and all that remains unspoken be lovingly held in our hearts and minds. Moving now to our blessings, as our gratitudes can be a sustaining force in times of uncertainty and challenge. I can start us off by sharing that we celebrate and affirm that Christopher Lee has joined First Unitarian as a voting member after several years of valued presence among us, along with his daughter, Annabelle. If you're interested in learning more about membership, speak to any member of the staff team. Judith Magny is sharing that her 13 and 15-year-old granddaughters received their first vaccines yesterday. That is such wonderful news as we all watch so many of our friends and relations who are younger get their first vaccines. Our thoughts are also with anyone who is frustrated by trying to book an appointment or who continues to wait. Ruth Tate is joyful about the exuberant vegetal life outside, indeed. Matt Rideout was recently told that Matt's dog had a short time to live upon specialized testing last week, and we were told the original tests were faulty and he is totally fine. That is indeed a huge relief, Matt. Our fur babies, as they're called in our family, are such a source of comfort and joy to us all, and I'm so happy that you got that good news. Kelly Ferguson, happy birthday to dear friend Deirdre Boyle. She is a light. Natsia Miller, thankful for a quiet early morning walk in the neighborhood. Wonderful lilac scents and bird songs. Nicole Johnson, happy to be expecting a baby girl in November. Nicole's first. Congratulations. That is momentous news, Nicole. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. We hope you're feeling well. Robin and Ren and Harry, two big milestones for some of the mighty women in my Single Moms Club. Jen Chan celebrated the completion of her treatment for breast cancer this week, and our very own Bridget Swenson celebrated her 50th birthday with an awesome DJ'd dance party over Zoom. Happy birthday, Bridget. And so happy to hear that Jen has completed her treatment. Thank you, Robin and Ren and Harry for sharing that. Jessica Holmes, Alexa receives her first vaccine on Friday. That's such good news. Thank you. Margaret Kaur, congratulations to the team that put together the Sharing Sacred Spaces Toronto video last Thursday, featuring First Unitarian. This is such a wonderful interfaith occasion for us to participate in. Thanks to Margaret and Richard Kirsch for bringing that opportunity to us, to Kim Saltarsky and Reverend Lynn for producing such a wonderful, wonderful video showcasing the theology, the preaching, and the vital and vibrant life at First Unitarian so that we could share that with our interfaith partners. Oh, and here's Reverend Sean with more on something very similar. Margaret Newell is sharing gratitude for the vaccine hunters who are helping people obtain appointments. Elise Di Pasquale, grateful that after 6 months of uncertain immigration status, that this week Elise received the 2-year work permit extension and an invitation to apply for permanent residency. That is very, very joyful news, Elise. Thank you for sharing that with us. Owen and Meg, after living in a shelter and prior to that, a tent for a year, Meg's client got her very own 1-bedroom apartment this week. She is so happy. We are all so happy as well to hear that there is safe and hospitable housing available for Meg's client. Amanda is grateful to have had the invasive garlic mustard weeds removed from Amanda's yard and to no longer be smelling garlic. Also grateful for their neighborhood gardening group. And Bridget Swenson, so grateful for everyone who was able to join for an amazing Zoom dance party last night. And also grateful that Scarlett had her first vaccine this week. Another young person who's now had a vaccine. And Jay Guberman, feeling gratitude for a community that cares for itself in scarcity. I'm seeing so much abundance in connection. Thank you so much for that beautiful reflection. Will you join me in meditation or prayer? Spirit of life, the divine, known to us by many names and beyond all naming, we give thanks for the gift of this day, for this time to pause, to be together, and for all that has been so generously shared among us here today. As the days of spring and the richness of nature's gifts unfold, as we again sample the fruits of Earth's bounty at the farm market and on our tables, may we take this moment to be thankful for the gifts that Earth gives us and for the many hands whose labor brings them to us. May we always nourish our Mother, Earth, as we have been nourished by her. In this most miraculous and generative of seasons and in this promising yet challenging time, may we revel in the wonder that is all around us, mindful of the many reasons for gratitude and joy. Even as we embrace the unknown twists and turns which surely will come, may we know that we are stronger than we think, that we are not alone, and that it does not fall to us alone to repair what is broken and bruised, but that we are bound up in a network of mutuality with each other, and we can be co-workers with the divine, however we may understand it. Amidst all that occupies our hearts and minds, may we know that we are held by love, each and every one of us on this day and all our days. This we seek in the name of all that is sacred. Amen. Blessed be.
I want to share with you two readings this morning that get at different conceptions of the divine, and I'm sharing two readings because I could not decide between them, and they are very, very different. Our first reading comes from Waldo Emerson's 1841 essay, The Oversoul, the term he coined to describe his experience of God, but with a new name, a name not to be confused with the Western concept of God, which he had come to think of as partial and incomplete, unnatural and distant. Emerson wrote this essay a few years after he formally left the Unitarian ministry and devoted his energies to the building of the Transcendentalist movement. Let us learn the revelation of all nature and thought, that the highest dwells with us, that the sources of nature are in our own minds. As there is no screen or ceiling between our heads and the infinite heavens, so there is no bar or wall in the soul, where we, the effect, cease, and God, the cause, begins. I am constrained every moment to acknowledge a higher origin for events than the will I call mine. There is deep power in which we exist and whose beatitude is accessible to us. Every moment when the individual feels invaded by it is memorable. It comes to the lowly and simple. It comes to whosoever will put off what is foreign and proud. It comes as insight. It comes as serenity and grandeur. The soul's health consists in the fullness of its reception. Forever and ever the influx of this better and more universal self is new and unsearchable. Within us is the soul of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty, to which every part and particle is equally related, the eternal one. When it breaks through our intellect, it is genius. When it breaks through our will, it is virtue. When it flows through our affections, it is love. Our second reading, which is decidedly different, comes from the curt and sassy verse of George Ella Lyon. God is fed up. All the ocean she gave us, all the fields. God sees us now, gorging ourselves and starving our neighbors, starving ourselves and storing our grain. And she says, I've had it. You cast your trash upon the waters, it's rolling in. You stuck your fine, fine finger in the mystery of life to find death, and you did. You learned how to end the world in nothing flat. Now you come crying to your mommy, send us a miracle, prove that you exist. I set you down a miracle among miracles. You want more? It's your turn. You show me. It was a Sunday morning like any other when a young girl was drawing a picture with bold strokes and bright colors. Her teacher, viewing the work of art that had so engrossed the child, said, "Tell me about your picture." The little girl said, "I'm drawing a picture of God." "I see," said the teacher, "but nobody knows what God actually looks like." "Well, they will when I'm finished," said the little girl with unquestionable authority. I, like most clergy, hold a Master of Divinity degree, and I wish I had even a fraction of her confidence when it comes to speaking about the divine. And I will admit that I sometimes wish other people had a wee bit less confidence than they sometimes seem to have when they make bold claims in the name of their own deity. In my experience, few people are actually masters of divinity, and the people I can think of to nominate to this lofty title would be the absolute last ones ever to embrace it. They seem to carry themselves with a certain amount of humility, are often possessed by great doubts. They sometimes wrestle with their sense of the divine and yet still somehow pour out their lives in service to all that they consider sacred. But rarely are these the voices that gain the most attention in the marketplace. When we hear people talk of the divine these days, it is too often from voices that speak with such deep confidence that their understanding of God could and should be yours too. If you've ever taken the exit off of the DVP at Richmond Street downtown, you've surely seen, as you've come around the bend, the huge sign that reads, "Prepare to meet thy God." At the bottom, the sign conveniently lists a phone number, which connects to the office of the church that sits just down below the sign. Every time I see it, I wonder if it's actually an invitation or if it's meant to be a word of immediate warning, somehow a theological commentary on my driving ability. Full disclosure, our real estate team seriously explored the possibility of buying that building about a year and a half ago, billboard and all. It was an interesting exercise to consider just what message we would put up in the place of the one that is there currently. I was rooting for "Prepare to meet thy neighbor," or maybe "Prepare to celebrate your place in the interdependent web of all existence of which you are a glorious and intrinsic part." Obviously, I'm not so great at writing pithy billboard ads. And for better and sometimes for worse, with all our many words and caveats and critical nuances, Unitarian Universalist theology isn't easily reduced down to a bumper sticker or a billboard. This past week, I and many from our congregation took part in the Sharing Sacred Spaces Interfaith Initiative. Thursday night was our congregation's turn to be featured. For a portion of the program, Lynn and I fielded questions from people of other faiths. There were questions about our history, our theology, and our rituals. And there were a couple of questions that danced around the edges of what we think about God. Most any time I am called upon to speak for this congregation or for Unitarian Universalism in general, I have to explain that we are not necessarily of one mind on any subject, and especially when it comes to matters of belief. But by and large, when we do turn to the question of the divine, it is safe to say that the classic view of God in the Abrahamic faiths, as being all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-loving, is one that has been thoroughly debated and dismissed by many, if not most, UUs for quite some time now. After all, such a God has an awful lot to answer for when we look to the suffering that stems from what are sometimes called acts of God, tsunamis that wash away life, or earthquakes that wipe out tens of thousands in a single bitter instant. In the face of such tragic losses of life, it has been our common human response to seek an answer to the comforting question of why. Why did this happen? Why does this kind of thing happen? In grief and in desperation, people with such questions have long looked to the heavens for answers, answers that, at least for many of us, are never answered in a satisfying way. In what tends to be an endless silence, there are at least 4 ways, I think, to interpret such tragic moments. The first option is to assume that God isn't aware or just doesn't care. The second option is to assume that God is aware of the unfolding tragedy but lacks the power to prevent it. The third option is to blame God, seeing divine will or maybe even divine punishment behind such an event. And the fourth way I see is to interpret such a tragedy in accepting that maybe our conceptions of God, if God exists at all, are seriously flawed. And knowing that with that may come just having to accept that earthquakes and tsunamis, volcanoes and tornadoes are simply the high cost of living on a volatile planet, the natural result of the powerful forces that make the earth what it is. In my experience as a minister, I have found this last option offers cold comfort to many and is the hardest explanation for most people to embrace. We want more meaningful answers, a grounding story that feels less random. People seem to like the idea that someone somewhere is in charge. And so from the beginning of time, it seems humankind has crafted enduring stories to help us make sense of the forces that are beyond our own power or control. These stories have variously regarded these forces as the divine energy animating the universe, as the hands-on creator of all that we know, or the first cause that brought us the Big Bang. Across time, these stories have cast the divine as a protective parent guiding the course of history, as a supernatural superhero working outside the bounds of time and beyond the laws of nature that seem to constrain the rest of us. Following the great earthquake of Lisbon in the 18th century, or the Holocaust in the 20th, when facing the difficulty of reconciling an all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-loving God with the hard realities of this world, theologians and philosophers alike wondered whether the divine was simply a projection of our deepest human needs. The poet Langston Hughes got at this in his biting way. The ivory gods and the ebony gods and the gods of diamond and jade sit silently on their temple shelves while the people are afraid. Yet the ivory gods and the ebony gods and the gods of diamond and jade are only silly puppet gods that the people themselves have made. In time, some theologians came to conceive of the divine in different ways, calling it instead things like the ground of being or creative interchange. Others, beginning with Nietzsche and continuing on ever since, have simply pronounced God to be dead. Over the course of 30,000 years of human history, our notions of and relationship with the gods, the goddess, or God himself have evolved as our circumstances and our needs have changed. In every age, the divine has taken on a different character. And what has been true of human history has, for many of us, been true of our own history. I imagine that few of you are still working with the same God you started out with, if you had one to begin with at all. It's certainly been true for me. I long ago left the belief that God was some kindly but unpredictable elderly gentleman with a booming voice and a flowing beard sitting on a cloud in judgment of my life or yours. While that understanding of God is still widely held and continues to animate religious fundamentalism in its many varied forms, it isn't and hasn't been the understanding of God that has been held by a significant number of religious leaders and theologians for a very long time, especially in the Unitarian Universalist tradition. Did you catch what Emerson had to say about the Oversoul in that passage I read earlier? Those words he penned 180 years ago. Let us learn, he said, the revelation of all nature and thought, that the highest dwells with us, that the sources of nature are in our own minds. As there is no screen or ceiling between our heads and the infinite heavens, so there is no bar or wall in the soul, where we the effect cease, and God the cause begins. I am constrained every moment to acknowledge a higher origin for the events than the will I call my own. There is deep power in which we exist and whose beatitude is accessible to us. Every moment when the individual feels invaded by it is memorable. It comes to the lowly and simple. It comes to whosoever will put off what is foreign and proud. It comes as insight. It comes as serenity and grandeur. Within us is the soul of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty, to which every part and particle is equally related, the eternal one. When it breaks through our intellect, it is genius. When it breaks through our will, it is virtue. And when it flows through our affections, it is love. I don't know about you, but that is not the God I grew up with, though it's definitely one I wish I had. How I wish I had known earlier of the teachings of the Transcendentalists. How I wish I had read theology in kindergarten. How different it might have been to move through this world more alive to its wonders, more awake to the sense of the divine in all things, more attuned to my part in the unfolding creation of the world. Yet I see myself as a work in progress, and I am grateful that my own understanding of theology continues to change and evolve. While I don't consider myself a theist by any definition, my more ardent atheism from a few years back has given way to a more comfortable agnosticism over time. I resonate deeply with those words from Jean-Paul Sartre, who said, "That God does not exist, I cannot deny, but that my whole being cries out for God, I cannot forget." And so I recognize that the feelings of awe that well up within me when I look out upon the majesty of the natural world, or peer into the depths of resilience in the human heart, when I see the power of creativity, the force of creation alive in me and around me, I recognize these things as the same inspiration to which others give the name of goddess or God, that stirring in the universe and in life itself that some call divine. Now, I often find that others are much more comfortable than I am in assigning intelligence or agency to the sense of the divine. I don't personally experience the world in that way, but I know and honor the fact that others do. And so I endeavor to listen and to learn and to hold my heart open. And I try to resist judging people to somehow be ignorant when they see and name these things differently than I do. I try to reverence the reverences of others as best I can. But that doesn't mean I don't welcome debate. Sometimes I even start them, especially when I believe that a person's theological beliefs are harmful or destructive. But it's not just fundamentalist I am talking about. One of my great frustrations with the spate of books from a few years ago by the New Atheist was that Dennett and Dawkins and Hitchens and Harris, the men sometimes referred to as the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, all spent far too much time tearing down the most egregious and violent elements in religion, and almost entirely failed to recognize or engage the variety of voices that have struggled and stretched to reach deeper and different and life-giving understandings. While much of what they wrote rings true for me, I don't believe that it was enough. I wanted to hear the constructive and creative responses that says that there is another way that leads on to life and to life more abundant. I want to hear an appreciation for the poetry and the metaphor that speak to our sense of being part of the web of life and feeling a sense of connection to something larger than ourselves, that something that many find within, between, and beyond us. Perhaps that will be a book that I have to write myself someday. Or perhaps it really is simply the book that each of us writes in the comings and the goings of our daily lives. The theologian Gordon Kaufman has said that the central question for theology is not merely or even preeminently who or what God is, or how God is to be distinguished from the idols. Most fundamentally, he says, it is a practical question. How are we to live? To what should we devote ourselves? To what causes? should we give our lives? These are the questions that matter most to me. They are, I believe, the questions at the heart of this great faith. They are the questions that swirl in my mind when we affirm in our covenant the hope that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine, that all may grapple in life-giving ways with what they hold to be most true, most sacred, most divine. Whether they call it the spirit of life, the power of love, the call of justice, or the beautiful organic unfolding of the universe itself. By whatever name we call it, may we endeavor to live in harmony with it, aware of the countless ways that it shapes our days and gives substance to our lives. So be it.
Shower, shower, shower the people you love. Shower the people with love. You can play the game and you can act out the part, but you know it wasn't written for you. But tell me, how can you stand there with your broken heart, ashamed of playing the fool? One thing can lead to another. It doesn't take any sacrifice. Oh, father and mother, sister and brother, if it feels nice, don't think twice. Just shower the people you love with love. Show them the way that you feel. Things are gonna work out fine if you will. Shower the people you love with love. For the people you love. Show them the way that you feel. You gotta feel it. Things are gonna work out fine if you will. And you will. You can run, but you cannot hide. This is widely known. And what you plan to do with your foolish pride when you're all by yourself alone? Once you tell somebody the way that you feel, you can feel it beginning to ease. I think it's true what they say about the squeaky wheel, always getting the grease. Better to shower the people you love with love. Show them the way that you feel. Things are gonna work out fine if you will. Shower the people you love with love. Show them the way that you feel. Whoa, things are gonna work out fine if you will. And you will. Shower the people. Shower the people you love with love. Shower the people. Ooh. Shower the people you love with love. Shower the people. Ooh. Shower the people you love with love. Shower the people. Hey, yeah. Shower the people you love with love. Shower. They say in every life, they say the rain must fall. Just like the pouring rain, make it rain. They say rain must fall, just like the pouring rain, make it rain. Oh, love, love, love is sunshine.
Speaking of divine inspiration, it's always a gift to see multiple versions of our own Danny Fong and his friend David. I leave you now with these words of benediction. For all who behold God, may God go with you. For all those enlivened by the goddess, may she nurture and nourish you. For all who embrace life, may life return your affection. And for all who seek a right path, may a way be found and the courage to take it with each day. Blessed be.
As our service comes to an end, we're thankful you could be with us. We especially want to thank Linda Curley of Birchmount Bluffs Neighborhood Center for visiting us today, as well as Dallas Bergen, who's away, Danny Fong, and his friend David Lane for arranging the wonderful rendition of Shower the People. We gather here each Sunday for our services as well as online throughout the week. Although Monday meditation will not meet tomorrow in recognition of the holiday, you're most welcome to join us on Tuesday mornings for awakenings and Thursdays for evening reflections. The links for all our major congregational events can always be found on our homepage. For those joining us by Zoom, if you're new to First, you're warmly invited to visit the newcomer room immediately after service via the link in the chat and on our website. Thank you, Diane Wagner, for hosting. For those who would like to join us for the virtual coffee hour, we'll send you into breakout groups for an opportunity to chat with a small group of people in just a few minutes, and to take as your guiding question for these groups, what does the divine mean to you? If you wish to participate today, you can simply, if you don't wish to participate today, you can simply decline the invitation, enjoy the postlude that Adam will be playing next, and exit the meeting when you're ready. Again, thank you for joining us. Take good care, one and all. Go in peace.